Our verse for today is John chapter 6, verse 35. This is part of what's known as the Bread of Life discourse, which encompasses the entire 6th chapter of John's Gospel. In verse 35, Jesus says, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." It's interesting to me that there's only one miracle that Jesus does that appears in all 4 Gospels. And that miracle that's recorded in all 4 is the feeding of the 5,000. That tells us this is a very significant moment in Jesus' ministry. And John devotes an entire chapter and more verses to it, really, than any of the other Gospels. And remember that Jesus, after feeding the 5,000 in John's Gospel, there ends up being this whole discussion about Jesus and Moses and what Moses did in feeding their ancestors in the wilderness with manna and with what Jesus has done. And Jesus is trying to direct people away from physical bread, from thinking about the actual food that you eat. Jesus is making the point that he is the bread of life. Well, what is bread? It is something that is the staff of life, as one person said a long time ago. It's an elemental part of what sustains us every day. And just like we need to feed on physical bread, unless we have gluten issues, we need to feed on physical bread to give energy to our bodies. We need to feed on Jesus spiritually to give energy to our souls. And so Jesus says, whoever comes to me, whoever approaches him and seeks a relationship with him, will never be hungry. Now that doesn't mean we won't be physically hungry, of course, but it means that in Jesus we find the one who satisfies our soul's deepest needs. Augustine said, our hearts are restless until they find rest in thee. And that's the sense that Jesus is trying to get at in the Bread of Life discourse. That those of us who come to Christ, who seek to have a relationship with him, we will have food, as Jesus says elsewhere, that other people don't know of, that they don't understand. Jesus is truly the bread that will energize us, sustain us, and strengthen us, even in these challenging days that we're living through.